Hello everyone. Today I am going to start a new topic, that is policy evaluation, but it is also in the context of what I have discussed earlier, that is policy formulation and implementation. So in my previous lectures I had discussed about policy implementation as well as policy formulation and what are the steps in it and how crucial it is for the various formal and informal sectors to make policy in a certain area. And so today I am going to talk about policy evaluation or evaluation of policies, which is again another important tool in the policy cycle. Apart from formulation and implementation, it is equally very essential that the policy needs to be evaluated in a very effective and coordinated manner. The policy process is quite long and it is arduous, and as noted in the previous lectures, the policy process it comprises of various key stages. Like from it begins with the identification of problems and the issues of policies, chalking out various solutions and alternatives, analyzing and comparing the possible alternatives, selecting the best possible alternatives, putting them into the concrete forms as policies and implementing them effectively. And finally, one has to assess the outcome and impact. So in this process, policy evaluation also plays a very significant and important role. Modified emphasis on the policy process points to a renewed awareness and sensitivity to the importance of those value choices which shape public priorities and commitments to governmental action. During the mid and later half of the 20th century, it was witnessed that certain serious concerns were taken up towards evaluative studies with the help of better methodologies, use of scientific methods, interdisciplinary approaches, and use of electronic data processing systems. So many of the observers of the functioning of government tend to think that policies may be improved upon, and inefficiencies and administration can be corrected on the basis of scientific policy evaluation. So a viable evaluation of policies and action would becomes necessary and useful. So sometimes it is fraught with political implications. So we will discuss about the various types or significance, the approaches, methods of policy evaluation. And evaluation, as I said, that what is the significance when we pose a question, this why policy evaluation is important, or what is significant in the evaluative process, is that it's so much not so much ultimate success and failure, but the policy the policy actors and the organizations and the institutions they represent can learn from the formal and informal evaluation of policies in which they are engaged, and this can lead them to modify the positions in the direction of greater substantive or procedural policy change, or it can lead them to resist in any alteration to the status quo. Policy evaluations do not necessarily result in major policy changes, but it can be said that the concept of evaluation suggests an implicit feedback loop which is an inherent part of the policy cycle. In many cases, this loop may be operationalized or may result in only incremental changes to the status quo. Path dependence, in which policies are set on trajectory following some critical juncture, can hinder policy change and learning. So organizational institutional designs which limit absorptive capacity are also often seen as barriers to learning from policy evaluations. An evaluation takes an objective stance, and when you look at it, what it's been found that through the lens of evaluation, it can be seen that what have you been doing or what have been done, and it also identifies the reasons for both the success and failure of a policy and how the future work can I can learn from both. So it can be, it is about understanding the pros and cons, understanding how what would be the future predictions, and what one can seek on what one can learn from these approaches, from the success and failure of a policy. So it is normally carried out at the end of the project, and evaluation is usually carried out either at a specified time, or as in the case with a multi-phased project, or at the end of the phase, depending upon when at what stages and at what level policy evaluation is required. Equally, evaluation is a means by which those administering the project are held accountable to both beneficiaries as well as the funders, and the two proper objectives of the evaluation can be traced, like to learn from the experience in order to enable the realization of qualitative improvement and greater effectiveness in future, and then secondly, to render accountability to donors with a view to assess to the assessment and approval of the new project proposal. Now it is very important to talk about the two different uses for evidence within government: accountability and learning. Evidence is useful for both and they are equally important, but there are often tensions between the two. So if accountability is about, if we look into two parts of it, so accountability and learning are two important aspect of policy impact, or impact of evaluation on policy, and accountability is about proving something to others. When we speak about holding government accountable for delivering, what we are asking the government to do is to produce evidence that it has done what it was supposed to do. So it is been like proving that what the government had promised, or what the government had made certain what the government had promises the government had made, and what manifestos they had during the time of election, or after when they have come to power, it has been put into program. So it's a kind of they're proofing that what they had said, what they had promised, or what they had advocated to deliver, it has been done. And in the context of impact assessment and evaluation, accountability can be about proving to others that a program was effective, or that it works the way is the theory of change expects to it. Learning, on the other hand, is about improving. The consumers of the evidence are often of the same ones who are creating it, because they want that information to better their policy. The key audience is internal, not external to those who are responsible for designing and implementing the policy. For example, an impact evaluation can prove the effectiveness of a program to outsiders, but also helps insiders learn ways to improve it. There might be also times when there are questions that our insiders are interested in that the outsiders aren't, or vice versa, and sometimes they even directly conflict. So if evidence is going to be used for accountability purposes, it can make people less open and less willing to learn from the evidence, that it means admitting that they made mistakes. So good evaluation is vital to ensure that policies, programs, projects and initiatives meet their intended objectives and purpose. It has to be, we would be in a position to ensure, or rather to establish that if and why a policy works by applying appropriate research and appraisal methods, and these in turn feed into the policy's decisions making process, and hopefully lead to a better decision and ultimately better policy outcomes. So accountability and learning are both important, and the same evidence can serve both the purposes. If we talk about if we look into the clarity of a concept like what policy evaluation is, or how we can say that policy evaluation is insignificant. So the last stage of policy process is of course policy evaluation, and for many early observers, policy evaluation was expected to consist of assessing if a public policy was achieving its stated objectives, and if not, what could be done to eliminate eliminate the impediments to their attainment. And policy evaluation uses a range of research methods to investigate it in a more systematic and organized way. The effectiveness of policy can include interventions, implementations, and the processes used to deliver policy outcomes. And it is also important in policy evaluation to use a range of qualitative as well as quantitative methods, experimental and non-experimental designs, descriptive and experiential methods, theory-based approaches and economic appraisal approaches in order to understand or in order to assess the efficiency and effectiveness of policy. So, particularly it can be said that evaluation is an activity aimed at developing an understanding of the merit, worth or utility of a policy by closely examining its different elements or components. However, the nature of question that can be answered differs significantly depending upon what elements the evaluation focus on. So, the reason for using a range of methods is to ensure that a balanced view has taken and reduce the shortcomings of using only one method. It can be further said that a general framework to guide policy evaluation is the one that conceptualizes public intervention as a relation between social problems or the needs that are to be addressed and a continuum of resources, activities and products that constitute the core of the public policy, followed by the effects of outcomes that are expected to occur as a consequence of the policy. So, policy evaluation ground the analytical perspective in the logical process used to determine the disparity between what was conceptualized by the initial policy goals and what has actually been accomplished by the policy or program as implemented. So, the models or approaches of policy evaluation focus their analysis on different objectives such as what is the true purpose of the evaluation, what is the role of the evaluator in the process, how broad or how narrow should the scope of the evaluation be, and finally how should the evaluation be organized and conducted. For example, what measurement instruments should be employed to determine success or failure of a policy. So, there are certain definitions which has been given by different scholars. In a more in a more simple statement, it can be said that evaluation is a more systematic and scientific attempt with emphasis on impacts and efficiency, effectiveness, relevance, reliability as well as sustainability. David Nackmeyer defined policy evaluation as the objective, systematic, empirical examination of the effects ongoing policies and public programs have on their targets in terms of the goals they are meant to achieve. Rossi and Freeman had also specified it as a very systematic application of social research procedures for assessing the conceptualization, design, implementation and utility of social intervention programs. So, policy evaluation can be described, or if you try to analyze these definitions and come up with a summation of it, it can be described as a procedure that appraises the worthwhileness of a policy and considers the special context and political and economic variables of the situation. For example, evaluation research may pinpoint the extension which the goals of a policy are achieved, besides identifying the constraints associated with it. Poor results obviously imply lack of effectiveness and efficiency, but however, a policy evaluation may suggest changes in the policy to obtain desired results. Evaluation research also assumes that the program can be scrapped if it is not effective. For a policy maker, policy evaluation is a means of getting the relevant information or knowledge regarding policy problems, the effectiveness of past and prevailing strategies for reducing or eliminating the problems so as to improve the effectiveness of specific policies. So uncertainty and risk in policy making are reduced because of such knowledge and information. Administrative accountability is equally enhanced, and administrative control over policy is appropriately increased. There are certain criterias when you tend to evaluate a policy. There are certain key points or criteria on the basis of which policies can be understood and can be evaluated. In fact, there are two principles related to the evaluation criteria. The first one is that criteria should be applied thoughtfully to support high quality useful evaluation. They should be understood in the context of the individual evaluation, the intervention being evaluated, and the stakeholders involved. And evaluation questions like what we are trying to find out and what you intend to do with the answers should inform how the criteria are specifically interpreted and as well as analyzed. Principle 2, the use of criteria depends upon the purpose of evaluation. The criteria should not be applied mechanistically. Instead, they should be covered according to the needs of the relevant stakeholders and the context of the evaluation. The simplest criteria is that most often employed in policy literature and in implementation is whether statutorily prescribed goals are met and to what extent. The criteria should be viewed as a set of lens through which one can understand and analyze an intervention. They provide complementary perspectives, giving a holistic picture of the intervention, its implementation as well as the results. So together they describe the desired attributes of all development interventions, policies, programs and project. They should be relevant to the context, coherent with other interventions, achieve results in an efficient way and have positive lasting impact for sustainable development. Now there are certain criteria of evaluation which focus either on the objectives themselves or on the means relationship between strategies and objectives. For POISTED, they have added performance variables such as effectiveness, adequacy and appropriateness. Edward Schuckman proposes a 5-dimensional scheme for evaluating success, for evaluating the success and failure of a policy, that is effort, performance, adequacy, efficiency and process. And Fred M. Frohox had given 4 concepts or criteria for policy evaluation, which has received a great deal of attention by scholars, and that is equity, efficiency, Pareto optimality and public interest. Now if you look into these each criteria, if you talk about equity, equity primarily relates to fairness, uprightness and equality. Equity means giving to each person his due, impartiality, a system of supplementary law founded upon precedents and established principles. So equity is a branch of law that provides remedy where the common law does not apply. So equity therefore refers to the distribution of effects and effort among different groups in society. So the criterion or equity implies the question, are costs and benefits distributed equitably among the different groups. So policy designed to redistribute income, social benefits and employment opportunities in public services are often recommended and evaluated on the basis of the criteria or equity. So in the criterion of equity, so in most of the democratic system, if you talk about right to equality, has been provided to the citizen irrespective of caste, creed, sex, background. The question before the policy makers or the evaluators is how much the policies are able to serve the disadvantaged sections of the society. and how far the policies have resulted in reducing inequalities. So, to some scholars, the concept of equity is not free from controversy, but then to the concept of equity, fairness and justice are related to political power and involve subjectivity. So, however, the process involves the distribution of power in society, which would influence the perception. Individual and groups, they have different values, objectives and perceptions. So, perceptions, what satisfied one person or group may not satisfy the other individual. Then if we talk about efficiency, efficiency refers to keeping cost down in achieving benefits as measured by benefits minus costs, or benefits divided by costs. In other words, it is the amount of output created and their quality in relation to the resource, capital as well as personal invested. It is then a measure of how productively the resource have been used. So, efficiency is generally equated with economic rationality. So, when efficiency is expressed in monetary terms, it refers to the ratio of monetary it refers to the ratio of plus monetary income from the output to the monetary input costs of input. So, the main problem in evaluating efficiency depends upon the decisions on the amount of various inputs which the evaluator considers to be reasonable for producing outputs. Moreover, making judgments about efficiency requires a proper perspective about public policy in terms of identifiable units such as program, projects or particular work process. But in many cases it becomes difficult to break government agencies and certain policies into smaller units for analysis. Then also there is a problem of subjectivity. Then we will talk about effectiveness. Effectiveness refers to its alternative public policies. It refers to the extent to which the planned output, that is the objectives and intended impacts are being or have been prescribed in practice. It may be appropriate to focus on the effects, especially on the outcome side, for two related reasons. For two related reasons. First, benefits for the intended beneficiaries are expressed at the point of effects, which make effects a much more significant measure of achievement than outputs, and being more directly derived from the inputs and activities of the respective development scheme than the impacts. So, the effectiveness becomes very important, and effectiveness is just not a simple exercise. It is often difficult to quantify or measure the impact. For example, it is not easy to measure the qualitative impact of education policies, environmental related policies or health policies. We may measure the rate of literacy, but not the level of enlightenment among the citizens. Then Pareto optimality. If you talk about efficiency, is a condition in which goods are produced at the lowest possible cost and in accordance with the highest economic preference for consumers. As per the Pareto definition, a given economic arrangement was efficient if there could be no rearrangement that would leave someone better off without worsening the position of others. So, under Pareto optimality, thus a policy that makes one or several persons better off without hurting anyone else is desirable. Pareto optimality is not without limitations. Some policies, such as those related to welfare, do not fare well under the Pareto optimality. Welfare is in a sense social transfer. Some are made better through the distribution of social resources, and distribution requires making some more poorer, making some poorer by taking their wealth to make others better off, and here may not be general acceptability to this objection. So, it is argued, for example, the giving relief is designed primarily to serve the larger economic and political order by ensuring social stability and only secondarily to give relief to the recipients. So, supporting this argument is the fact that welfare policies are typically installed during periods of social disorders, but the general validity of this argument aside, if we view welfare in terms of conflict management process, then Pareto optimality sanctions the distributions. The wealthy gain by preserving social stability, and the poor gain by getting assistance. Each class also loses nevertheless. So, then we will talk about the advocacy part. Advocacy refers to whether a given level of effectiveness results in the satisfaction of needs or values. While the policy effectiveness criterion deals with the relationship between policy goals and what is achieved, the adequacy of a policy refers to the relationship between the policy and the problem to which it is addressed. A clear distinction exists between adequacy and effectiveness in the sense that a policy may be judged to be successful in achieving its listed objectives, but it has very little impact upon the problem being addressed by the policy. For example, under the policy towards rural upliftment, a number of programs were introduced and implemented, grants were distributed, agriculture development measures were taken up, but however rural poverty and unemployment still persist. So, it may be added that the dimension of adequacy may point to the complexity of relationships complexities of relationship to be taken in terms of cost, in terms of cost and effectiveness. So, a policy may meet the criterion of cost effectiveness, but the resultant outcome in terms of satisfaction level of people turns out to be very poor. This means poor adequacy of the said policy. However, the concept of adequacy, the concept of adequacy too is not free from any objections, as in the case of effectiveness and efficiency. Then ensuring of adequacy is not a simple task. Rather, it involves more subjectivity and is value laden. It is not possible to simply quantify the level of adequacy. So, systematic studies based on rigorous methodology are required to identify the various dimensions of adequacy of certain policy. Talking about public interest, public is interested in the end product or the real outcome of a particular policy. It has been rightly pointed out that the public is interested in law, not in the laws, in the method of law, not in the substance, in the sanctity of a contract, not in a particular contract, and understanding based on custom, not in the custom or that. So, the public is interested in a workable rule which will define and it will predict the behavior of individual as they can make their certain adjustments. The public may often show a keen interest in the process of policy enactment. The public may also be sometimes interested in the issue of phenomenon due to one or the other reason, and may not be interested in the self. Thus, it is difficult to express the concept of public interest in a well formulated definition, but nevertheless public interest on the basis of majority strength, even then it does not come out in a clear sense, because it is often the minority in an overall situation that has a victorious stand. And then then we talk about public participation and responsiveness. Public participation and responsiveness is equally important, because quite close to the concept of public interests are the concept of public participation and responsiveness. Public participation refers to decision making by the target group, the general public, servant interests groups or other decision makers whose involvement reflects adherence to democratic procedures for achieving given goals. So, consensus and consultation that becomes entangled with the search for suitable means and alternatives to achieve those objectives. active active participation, it often leads to better acceptability, as well as implementation becomes less conflict prone. Besides, the concept of responsiveness indicates that the acceptance level as well as satisfaction level of a particular section of society is equally important. Certain welfare measures like education or health policies may satisfy the needs of some sections of the society, but may not invoke general positive response. And then we will talk about sustainability. Sustainability is another important concept in the development context. It refers to the continuation of the practices or work done or measures taken under a policy after the termination of current interventions under the same or an alternative policy. In more specific terms, sustainability would mean maintenance of physical facilities produced, such as roads and railways and buildings, constructions, infrastructure development, continued use of physical and intangible facilities like human resource, knowledge, skills, etc., and continued ability to plan and manage similar work, continued production of the kinds of output created, such as teachers, doctors, engineers, etc. So, maintenance of impacts created, such as improved health and sanitation, better environment, better consumer awareness, competitiveness in industry, and so on. And in multiplication of effects and impacts, sustainability is generally found, but it is found that sustainability is often to be a neglected criterion in policy analysis and evaluation. It is always important to utilize the existing or created condition, so as to build upon them the proposed policies and measures. This helps in continuity, efficiency, and effectiveness. Okay, I will stop this lecture today and I will continue with the policy evaluation in my next class. Thank you.